State lawmakers will soon run out of time to pass their bills, so we'll be seeing a lot of legislative action tonight and tomorrow. That's because some big issues have yet to be resolved, like changes to Kentucky's elections and limits on no-knock warrants. LEX 18's political reporter Carolina Buchek has more.
Only 3 days remain in the legislative session, so it is a race to the finish line here in Frankfort. Why the hurry? Well, the governor has a certain amount of days that he can veto a bill. So if lawmakers want to make sure they can override that veto, they need to get their bills passed by tomorrow. And one of the bills they really want to see become law is an elections bill.
Hundreds of voter suppression bills being introduced in states across the nation.
The Poor People's Campaign rallied outside of the Capitol today, urging lawmakers to make it easier for people to vote. They want Kentucky to run its elections like it did during the pandemic, where voters had a lot of options available to them.
What we need to do is have the same process that we had in the last general election. It showed that Kentucky had more voters than they have ever had in a voting election. And so people do want to engage in the democracy.
And Kentucky, which normally has some of the most restrictive voting laws in the country, is looking to make some voting changes permanent. House Bill 574 would expand voting access in Kentucky, but not nearly as much as we saw during the pandemic. For example, early voting. During the pandemic, people were able to vote in person for a few weeks leading up to the election. This bill would allow early voting, but limit it to 3 days before an election. So it gives voters a little more than normal, but not as much as they had in the last election. And that was the goal. Lawmakers wanted to strike a balance.
In legislation, you really have to be able to pass the law. So you have to build a consensus that satisfies enough people without satisfying anyone 100% and some without. You just have to strike a balance, and we think this does that.
And it's not just this bill that lawmakers want to get to the finish line. There are other issues like no-knock warrants or even the budget that lawmakers want to address. And if they want to address them, the clock is ticking. In Frankfort, Carolina Buchek, LEX 18 News.